So great, we are now back in grade 8 math and we're continuing on now with mixed fractions, and now we're subtracting fractions greater than 1. So we looked at the last lesson where we had adding fractions greater than 1, and what we did was we just kept the numbers and the fractions, or the whole numbers and the fractions, separate. So we're going to do kind of the same thing. We're just going to have to see though if we need to borrow, because as you know, subtraction, with addition, you can do 1 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 1, whereas in subtraction, 5 minus 1 will give a different answer from 1 minus 5, and I might end up in negative numbers. So let's take a look at this first example, and then we'll try the other ones on our own. So I have 7 and 1/6 minus 2 and 3/8. Let's say if we make this practical, if we say we have a total of 7 and 1/6 shelves that are full at the grocery store, and I'm removing 2 and 3/8 shelves of expired items. How many shelves remain of items, or how many shelves full are the remaining of items? You could try a couple of other different practical examples. So let's just take a look at this one. Again, find the common denominator for the fraction part only. Keep the whole numbers aside. Rewrite the question using equivalent fractions. And then if borrowing is needed, then I'll convert one from the minuend if I need to. So let's take this step by step. So I have a denominator here of 6 and 8. So my common denominator, there's a couple of ways to find this. I can either do 6 times 8 and make the common denominator of 48, or I can use a smaller number like 24 to be a common denominator. So for this first example, if I want a common denominator of 24, I just need to multiply this one by 4 over 4. And so I have 7 and 4 24ths. And for the other fraction, to get eighths into 24ths, I multiply by 3 over 3. So this example then ends up being 2 and 9 over 24. Now, if I take a look at these examples, if I have 7 and 4 24ths minus 2 and 9 24ths, if I look at my fraction parts, the 4 minus 9 will end up getting me in the negative. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to change my 7 into a whole mixed fraction here with an improper part. So this is 6 and 24 over 24. Notice that that is the same thing as 7 because it means 6 and 1. And I'm now adding this 4 over 24 to that. And still my 2 and 9 24ths is still there. I'll now combine my mixed part, or my fraction part. So I have my 24 plus my 4 makes 28 over 24 minus 2 and 9 24ths. And I subtract as normal. 6 minus 2 is 4, and 28 minus 9 is 19 over 24. If I want to check, I could go backwards and do 4 and 19 over 24 plus 2 and 9 over 24. Does that equal 7 and 1/6? So let's try out the second and the third examples involving the borrowing. Sometimes I might not need to borrow. If it looks like the two fractions I'll subtract nicely without any problems, then I don't need to borrow at all. So pause the video, try out these two examples, and then we can try to fix it on our own. So I can see here that the common denominator of 4 and 8, I can use the denominator 16, or I can use the denominator 32, whichever one I'd like. So in this case, I'll just use 16. So in order to get 16ths, I need to multiply this by 4 over 4. So 4 times 4 is 16, 3 times 4 is 12, so it's an equivalent fraction. And again, this over 16, I would multiply this by 2 over 2. And so I get 16 on the denominator and 10 on the top. So now if I just look at my fraction parts, I have 12 over 16 minus 10 over 16. In this case, I do not need to borrow because 12 minus 10 will not lead me into negative numbers. So I can just subtract this as normal. 3 minus 1 is 2, and 12 minus 10 pieces is 2 pieces of the 16 pieces. And then I can just reduce this, and I can have 2 and 1/8 as my final answer. For letter C, I could do the same thing. I have a 4 and a 3, so my common denominator will be 12. So my common denominator is 12. So 4 and 1/4 is the same thing as multiplying this by 3 over 3. Oops. And so 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. And for this fraction, I'll be multiplying by 4 over 4. So I have 2 and put my 12 in the bottom, and 2 times 4 is 8. So now my fraction operation is 4 and 3/12 minus 2 and 8/12. And I see that 3 minus 8 will lead me into negative, so I will need to borrow from the 4. So I'm going to convert this to 3 and 12/12 plus the 3/12 that's there, minus the 2 and the 8/12. Let's just fix that. So now I combine this to make 3 and 15/12 minus 2 and 8/12. I now subtract as normal. 3 minus 2 is 1, and 15 minus 8 is 7, and my 12ths are still the same size. So for this example, I have 1 and 7/12. So this is a trickier lesson because of the fact that we need to borrow if it seems like we're moving into the negatives. But try out a bunch of practice questions so that you're getting used to the method of it. And if you want to redo these questions and look at this video again, you can learn a little bit more, and hopefully you'll be able to be more comfortable when subtracting mixed numbers with fractions greater than 1. So hopefully you understand this lesson.